Picture this. A fragile dawn in 1675. The misty forests of New England hum with tension, the kind that settles before a storm that will never be forgotten. Shadows stretch across the trails worn by generations of Wampanoag, Narragansett, and Nipmuc hunters. The air feels heavy, as if the land itself knows what's coming. At the edge of Mount Hope, Metacom, the sachem the English call King Philip, stands unbroken. Tall, resolute, eyes burning with a fury carved by decades of lies. He is the son of Massasoit, the great Wampanoag leader who once welcomed the starving pilgrims, who shared maize, hunting grounds, and peace treaties sealed with trust. For half a century, that peace held like a fragile clay pot, cracked, repaired, cracked again. But now, it shatters. English settlers spread across the land like locusts, fencing fields, seizing meadows, cutting ancient forests into timber for Boston's ships. Their cattle trample cornfields. Their guns are everywhere. Their courts judge native people by English laws. Their ministers whisper that the land is theirs by divine right. Every treaty broken, every promise twisted, every acre swallowed. Metacom sees his world shrinking, his sovereignty mocked, his people disarmed, humiliated, and dragged before colonial magistrates. The execution of 3 Wampanoag men, hanged by the English for the murder of a Christian convert, breaks the final thread of trust. That's when a vision takes root in Metacom's mind. A great native confederation. Wampanoag, Narragansett, Nipmuc, Pocumtuck, Abenaki. A united front to stop the English before nothing is left. But alliances are fragile. Old rivalries fester. Some tribes fear English muskets, others fear losing their lands even more. Still, the fuse burns. Soon gunshots will echo at Swansea, and the entire frontier will explode. The war that follows will consume 52 colonial towns, wipe out a third of New England's settlements, kill over 5,000 native people, and become, per capita, the deadliest conflict ever fought on American soil. A war of ambushes in shadowed forests. A war of burning villages and starvation. A war that will end Metacom's dream and ignite a new, darker chapter in American history. This is King Philip's War, a forgotten inferno that scorched the soul of a continent and shattered indigenous hopes for generations. Stay with me, because in this tale of fire and fury, America's true beginnings are revealed. Part 1. Setup. Whispers of betrayal in the New World, imagine. New England in the early 1670s. Not the sanitized version from textbooks, but a fragile frontier pulsing with greed, fear, and cultural collision. On one side, Plymouth, Massachusetts Bay, and Connecticut, booming with settlers hungry for land. Their numbers have exploded since 1620. What began as a few hundred pilgrims is now over 50,000 colonists, armed with muskets, legal systems, and a belief that God himself ordained the continent for their taking. They spread across the landscape, carving English-style towns into forests that native peoples have lived in, shaped and protected for thousands of years. On the other side, the Wampanoag, Narragansett, Nipmuc, Mohegan, Podunk, Pocumtuck, and Abenaki, nations deeply rooted in the land. Skilled farmers, diplomats, hunters. Their societies have complex governance, trade networks, and spiritual connections to the soil. They are not primitive, they are not passive, they are sovereign. But the balance of power is shifting, and everyone feels it. Tensions simmer beneath the soil. Colonists fence off land after purchases made through coercion, language barriers, or outright deceit. Cows and pigs, animals foreign to native ecosystems, roam freely, destroying cornfields that sustain entire villages. English courts demand natives submit to colonial laws, punishing tribal customs as barbaric. A slow-burning fuse winds through every village. Then the tragedies begin. Massasoit, the great diplomat who kept peace for 50 years, dies. His sons inherit a fragile peace. First Wamsutta, Alexander. Summoned to Plymouth for questioning over land sales, he collapses on the return journey and dies within days. The Wampanoag whisper one word: poison. Colonial officials insist he had a fever. Trust collapses. Then comes the breaking point. John Sassaman, born Wampanoag, educated at Harvard's Indian College, fluent in English power, warns Plymouth that Metacom is preparing for war. Days later, Sassaman's body is found beneath the ice of Wamsutta Pond. Plymouth acts swiftly. Too swiftly. They arrest 3 Wampanoag men, Tobias, Wampapakwan, and Matashunanamo, convict them under colonial law, and hang them publicly on June 8, 1675. For Metacom, this is the final humiliation. A sovereign people tried by foreign courts, his close ally murdered, his kin dying under mysterious colonial custody. The message is clear. If the Wampanoag do not bow, they will be broken. So, Metacom makes a choice that will change history. He begins forging alliances quietly, desperately, across southern New England. Wampanoag sachems meet at night. Nipmuc leaders send cautious messages. Narragansett warriors consider joining, still haunted by the 1636-37 Pequot genocide at the hands of the English. The dream of a united native front flickers in the darkness. But unity is fragile. Some tribes depend on English trade, iron, blankets, muskets. Others fear retaliation. Some hope appeasement will save what little land they have left. And all the while, colonial militias train. Towns stockpile gunpowder. Ministers preach that the natives are instruments of Satan resisting God's order. The continent holds its breath, because everyone knows one more spark will ignite a firestorm, and in the summer of 1675, that spark arrives. Part 2, The War Ignites, Raids of Fury and Fragile Bonds, June 1675, and the tinder finally catches flame. Under a blood-red sky, Metacom's warriors move with silence and speed. The first blow falls at Deerfield, a pre-dawn raid, hidden arrows, burning houses, terrified screams echoing over frost-touched fields. Then Swansea, Providence, Woonsocket. Villages fall while colonists scramble for arms. Night after night, forests and swamps become hunting grounds. Natives know the land. Hidden trails, frozen marshes, coral gray brooks. They strike, swift as wolves, then disappear into the mists, leaving colonists to count dead and burn. Panic grips every settlement. Churches stay empty, doors are barred, fires burn all night for watchmen. Farms once safe now feel like traps. Colonists build palisades, stockades, blockhouses, blocking every trail. Towns that once cried plenty now whisper fear. Meanwhile, Metacom's dream flares brighter, then flickers. He sends envoys to the great native nations. The Narragansetts, led by Canon Shea, reluctantly answer the call. Nipmuc, Pocumtuck, even scattered Wampanoag clans slip away from colonial control to join the rising thunder. For a moment, a brief, beautiful moment, the forest echoes with drums of unity, but cracks appear too soon. Praying Indians, converted Indigenous men who accepted English faith, begin scouting for colonists, betraying hidden paths and hearing camps. In the west, the ancient empire of the Mohawks demands tribute from both sides. Colonists bribe them to fight their native neighbors. The Mohawks strike from the frontier, scalp raids, midnight ambushes, a sharpened edge. Deep fear and ancient rivalries poison trust. Some tribes whisper, "Will the English remember our alliances when the war ends?" Betrayal seeps in like rot, yet for a time the raids succeed. Farms burn, crops are lost, the colonial economy grinds toward ruin. Supply ships from Boston struggle under blockade and threat. Smoke rises where once there was peace. In desperation, colonists begin a ruthless counter-strategy. Scorched earth. Farms are burnt preemptively. livestock slaughtered. Fleeing refugees herded into fortified towns under brutal guard. Starvation stalks the countryside, especially once winter begins. But the cold brings no mercy nor peace. Winter, rivers, marshes, now frozen, become battlegrounds again. A frozen swamp hides a secret fortress, rumored to shelter families and rebels alike. Is it refuge or trap? Suspense hangs heavy, rations dwindling, faith strained, alliances cracking. Metacom and his allies brace for the storm to come, the crushing colonial retaliation that threatens to drown their fragile rebellion in blood and snow. Because in King Philip's War, when the forest burns, trust dies hardest. And the next blow could be the one that ends it all. Part 3. Turning Point, the Great Swamp Massacre and Crumbling Unity. December 19, 1675, a bitter winter's day. Snow blanketing southern Rhode Island, wind howling through frozen pines. What begins as a hunt for safety ends in devastating betrayal. Colonial militia, about 1,000 men strong, drawn from the United New England colonies and bolstered by some native allies from tribes such as the Pequot and Mohegan, assemble under Governor Josiah Winslow to strike what they believe is an enemy stronghold. Their target, a fortified winter settlement deep inside the frozen wetlands of the Great Swamp near present-day South Kingstown, a refuge for the tribe known as the Narragansett, who had tried to stay neutral. A native guide, whose betrayal is whispered among survivors, leads the militia through frozen marshes. The swamp's ice, thick from December's cold, becomes a camouflaged bridge, letting the colonists bypass natural defenses. Dawn breaks, the colonists strike. Wigwams burn. Gunfire rips through defenseless camps. As flames devour shelter and food stores, panic erupts. Women, children, elders, many non-combatants are caught in the blaze or shot while fleeing. Contemporary colonial accounts boast they confined the enemy and their families in a fiery prison. By nightfall, the Great Swamp Fort lies in ruins. The toll, hundreds of Narragansett dead, among warriors but also women, children, and elders. Estimates range widely, but reliable contemporary testimony marks it as one of the bloodiest and most brutal massacres in New England history. The colonists count their own losses, about 70 dead, 150 wounded, including officers, a heavy price paid in burning cold and treacherous ice for the withdrawal. The wounded suffer even more: frost, exposure, and a harsh night's march. Shockwaves, unity shattered, alliances dead. The massacre fractures what little hope of native unity remained. The Narragansett, once neutral, are now mortally wounded and thrust fully into the war. They rally under their Sachem Kananche, vowing revenge. But other tribes hesitate. Some fear English retaliation. Others distrust the Narragansett and Wampanoag. The Mohawks, longtime rivals with many tribes in southern New England, refuse to join. They even conduct raids against fleeing refugees, aligned with colonial forces. Praying Indians, converted tribesmen who had sided with the colonists, spread fear and suspicion, scouting trails, revealing hiding places, feeding colonial paranoia. Their presence deepens divisions and fractures solidarity among native nations. The alliance that Metacom tried to forge, a confederation across tribal lines founded on shared anger and survival, unravels under pressure. Distrust, fear, starvation, and betrayal tear at the seams. Meanwhile, colonial towns, ignited by the massacre, brace for renewed war. Villages for miles around reinforce walls, store arms, and call in militias from Plymouth, Connecticut, Massachusetts Bay, determined now to eradicate what they call the Indian menace. Shukkish some of the aftermath. From massacre to counteroffensives, yet the war only deepens. The Great Swamp Massacre proves a grim turning point, not the war's end, but the hour from which it spirals into deeper horror. The Narragansett, though shattered, strike back in spring 1676. Under Canonche, they and scattered allies burn Providence, including the home of the pacifist founder Roger Williams, and march with renewed fury across Rhode Island and northeastern Massachusetts, hoping to break colonial resolve. Yet starvation, cold, fractured alliances wear on them. Canonche himself will be captured and executed by mid-1676, a blow so grievous the remaining resistance fractures further. The colonial war machine, though shaken and bloodied by winter's swamp and sweat of retreat, recalibrates. Militias recruit more allied native fighters, supply lines shift westward, and every settlement reinforces. The war becomes not just guerrilla raids, but a full-blown campaign to subjugate, remove, or eradicate the native presence. For Metacom, for every native alliance, the Great Swamp is not a strategic defeat alone. It's a crime that echoes across generations. It exposes a painful truth. Unity among indigenous nations is fragile in the face of colonial brutality. Survival demands more than courage. It demands an impossible trust in justice from those who wield murder as policy. And for the English colonists, the swamp becomes a precedent. Ruthless, preemptive strikes, scorched earth justice, and a doctrine, once whispered, now carved in blood. No mercy for those who harbor the enemy. Part 4. The Bloody Endgame, Philip's Fall and Scattered Hopes, summer 1676. The forests once alive with war songs and cries for justice have turned silent, save for the crack of muskets, the whistle of pursuers, the moans of fugitives. The dream of a native alliance lies in tatters. Metacom, the proud Sachem who tried to unite tribes under one banner of resistance, is no longer a leader. He is a hunted man. The guerrilla raids once tearing through colonial farms and frontier towns have almost petered out. Hunger eats at his ranks. Frost, starvation, betrayal, among former allies and within tribes, have thinned their numbers. The ambush at Mount Hope, August 12, 1676. Colonial scouts, primarily Mohegan trackers led by famed Ranger Benjamin Church, discover Metacom's encampment at Mount Hope, Rhode Island. Under cover of pre-dawn gloom, Church's rangers surround the camp. Metacom, refusing to surrender, rallies a handful of warriors. He rides into the ambush, musket smoke still rising from collapsed wigwams. A shot rings out. A bullet, cold, fatal, finds Metacom's heart. What follows is horror and desecration. His body is taken to Plymouth, where colonists decapitate him, the head placed on a pike and displayed at the town's bridge for 20 years, as a warning, as a symbol, as a grotesque trophy. His wife and son are captured, sold into slavery in the Caribbean. Many children and non-combatants suffer the same fate, torn from their families, forced into servitude. The war, once a wide blaze of defiance, sputters into extinction. Aftermath. Tribes shattered, lives lost. Culture. In ruins with Philip dead, tribal resistance collapses almost instantly. Thousands surrender under brutal terms. Colonists demand hostages, enforce Christian conversion, confiscate lands, and redistribute property. Alliances forged in blood fracture under colonial coercion. Some natives align themselves with English colonial powers to survive, turning on their own kin in desperate gambles for safety or favor. Mohawk and Mohegan scouts lead the hunts. Tribal loyalties collapse. Trust dissolves in fear and pain. By conservative estimates, at least 2,500 natives die in combat, massacre, or from disease and starvation, roughly 40% of the surviving tribal population in southern New England. Some historians believe the real number was several times higher, in NPS.gov. On the colonial side, about 600 settlers and militia are killed, roughly 1 in 10 fighting men, but the colonial population, though deeply traumatized, survives. Over 50 colonial towns and villages are razed, entire settlements erased from the map. Farms, churches, mills, everything goes up in flames or is looted. But the greatest tragedy is not in numbers alone. It is in what is irrecoverably lost: unity, sovereignty, identity. The dream of a pan-native alliance, a confederation powerful enough to resist colonial incursion, dies under English muskets and colonial greed. Generations are irreparably changed. Families displaced, cultures dismantled, land stolen. Tribal voices silenced. Land reclaimed by colonists, forests logged, rivers dammed, treaty after treaty broken. And so ends the war, not with dignity, but with death, despair, and a warning carved in flesh and pike heads. Resistance comes at a terrible price. So closing thought, the ashes and the warning. The smoke clears, the forests grow back, rivers run cold, but the scar remains. In memory, in bloodlines, in stolen land, in silenced languages. King Philip's War did more than reshape maps. It crushed a hope, scattered alliances, erased families. It was America's first apocalypse, a brutal prelude to centuries of dispossession, assimilation, and genocide against native nations. But if you listen closely, you still hear echoes in those silent woods, in every footstep on stolen land, in every hollow where a village once stood, in every treaty broken, every displaced tribe, every cultural wound. The history wasn't buried, it was carved, in pain, in fire, in memory. And for those who remember, the war's final message endures. Colonial conquest may win the ground, but he who wipes out souls invites eternal reckoning. Part 5. Aftermath and Legacy. A continent transformed, 1676 slips into memory, but the land itself still trembles from what happened. King Philip's War doesn't just end, it reshapes a continent. Southern New England, from native homeland to colonial dominion. Before the war, native nations controlled the vast majority of southern New England, but after 1676, colonial expansion explodes. Vacant villages, their people dead, scattered, or enslaved, become instant targets for settlement. Entire regions once governed by the Narragansett, Wampanoag, Nipmuc, and Pecumtuck fall into English hands. The Narragansett nation, once a powerhouse of diplomacy and trade, is nearly annihilated. Entire families wiped out, survivors rounded up, their land in Rhode Island seized, parceled, sold. The Wampanoag, Metacom's people, are shattered into fragments. Some flee north to join the Abenaki, others are captured. A few remain, forbidden their language, stripped of their rights, forced under colonial law. The war becomes the bloodiest conflict per capita in U.S. history. Some towns lose half their adult male population. Native communities fare far worse, a demographic collapse that some historians describe as near genocidal. End of major native resistance in southern New England. Before the war, tribes negotiated with colonists from a position of power. After the war, that era is dead. Captured natives are executed, enslaved locally, shipped to the Caribbean, forced into indentures lasting decades, relocated to praying towns under strict Puritan control. For the English, King Philip's War becomes the proof they sought, that God favors their expansion, and that native peoples are obstacles, not neighbors. The frontier, once a tense balance, now becomes a one-way wave of English colonization. A shattered alliance network, trust broken forever. Before 1675, New England's tribes maintained intricate alliances. Wampanoag with Narragansett Nipmuc, with Pocumtuck Mohegan balancing both sides. Mohawk acting as a regional power broker. The war destroys all of it. Tribes that sided with the English, like the Mohegan and Pequot, are used as disposable scouts, then marginalized. Tribes that resisted vanish from their ancestral lands. Intertribal diplomacy collapses under colonial manipulation. Where once stood a tapestry of autonomous nations, now stands fear, distrust, and colonial domination. For the colonists, a new mindset, and new methods of war. The English walk away from King Philip's War forever changed. Militias professionalize. Training, fortifications, coordinated command. Ranger warfare is born. Benjamin Church's methods become the blueprint for future frontier fighting. Scorched earth tactics become normalized. Using native allies against native enemies becomes standard policy. These methods echo through history. In the Pequot War, the French, and Indian War, Pontiac's War, Tecumseh's War, the Seminole conflicts, even the Plains Wars and Wounded Knee. King Philip's War is the blueprint for 3 centuries of American Indian policy. Containment, displacement, elimination. Cultural erosion, yet indigenous survival endures. The colonists try to erase native culture. Languages outlawed in churches. Councils dissolved. Ceremonies banned. Children taken into English homes. Traditional governance replaced by colonial courts. But they do not erase native identity. Wampanoag, Narragansett, Mohegan, Nipmuc, Pequot, nations survive. Broken, yes, but unbroken in spirit. Today, tribes of New England continue. Reviving languages like Wampanoag, reclaiming ancestral sites, resisting erasure through art, activism, and cultural revival, challenging colonial narratives that painted their ancestors as villains. Their endurance is the final counterstroke to Metacom's tragic defeat. The legacy. The cost of American beginnings. King Philip's War isn't just a chapter in a textbook. It is the moment when indigenous autonomy in southern New England ends. Colonial dominance becomes irreversible. Future conflicts draw from its brutal lessons. A myth of righteous expansion takes root. The American story begins in fire, blood, and dispossession. The war exposes a truth still relevant today. What is called progress is often built on broken treaties and shattered nations. And yet, indigenous resilience lives on. In every Wampanoag elder speaking reclaimed words. In every Narragansett ceremony on ancestral ground. In every descendant who refuses silence. The war consumed a people's world, but not their spirit. Their story survives and demands to be told. Conclusion. The war that shaped America. And so, the fires of King Philip's War finally fade into the ashes of 1676. But those ashes, they didn't just blanket New England. They buried an entire world. What began as one man's desperate dream, Metacom's vision of unity and survival, ended as one of the deadliest per capita conflicts in American history. A war that killed 40% of the region's native population, erased entire nations from their homelands, and left colonial settlements smoldering ruins. But beneath the smoke, something far more permanent took shape. This was the moment when colonial power became destiny, when English settlers stopped fearing the forest and instead claimed it as their right. The moment New England shifted from a fragile coexistence to an unstoppable engine of expansion. From here on, the patterns were set. Scorched earth tactics, militia-style frontier warfare, using native allies against native nations, land seizure justified as divine providence, treaties broken the moment they became inconvenient. The blueprint for 300 years of American Indian policy was laid right here, in the blood-soaked soil of Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. But for Native peoples, the legacy is something different, something deeper, older, unstoppable. Because despite the devastation, they endured. The Wampanoag are still here. The Narragansett are still here. The Nipmuc, Mohegan, Pequot, still here. Their languages, once silenced, now spoken again. Their cultures, once outlawed, now revived. Their histories, once distorted, now reclaimed. King Philip's War didn't end a people. It ended an era and began a long, painful struggle for survival, sovereignty, and identity that continues to this day. And maybe that's the real story. Not just the fall of Metacom, not just the rise of colonial America, but the reminder that history is written not only by those who win, but by those who refuse to disappear. So, when we look back at 1675, 1676, we aren't just looking at war. We're looking at the origin wound of the United States, a wound whose scars shape politics, land rights, and cultural memory even now. This wasn't just a conflict, it was a turning point, a warning, a mirror, a truth we still wrestle with today. Because the story of America did not start with freedom. It started with fire. And as long as we keep telling these stories, fully, honestly, fiercely, that fire becomes light.